You know, the kinds of stories people tell around a campfire. Warnings passed down quietly, half whispered once the fire burns low. What most people don't realize is that many of those stories didn't come from imagination alone. They're tied to real campgrounds, places that still exist, where people still pitch tents, walk the trails, and sleep just feet away from where something went wrong. These are 8 chilling urban legends connected to real American campgrounds, rooted in history, tragedy, and unsettling experiences that visitors continue to report. Number 8. Lake Lanier, Georgia. In northern Georgia, the sprawling, man-made Lake Lanier is one of the state's most popular recreation spots. But beneath its shimmering surface lies a history that is anything but peaceful. To create the lake in the 1950s, the government flooded entire towns, forests, and farms. This included the town of Oscarville, a community that was violently emptied of its black residents in 1912. Cemeteries, buildings, and homes were submerged, some with their graves never relocated. Today, Lake Lanier is known as one of America's deadliest lakes, with an unusually high number of drownings and boating accidents since its creation. Swimmers have reported the terrifying sensation of being pulled or grabbed by unseen hands from below the surface. The most famous legend is that of the Lady of the Lake, a ghostly woman in a blue dress seen walking on the water or floating just beneath it, an apparition tied to a fatal car crash in 1958. At Lake Lanier, the past was not just buried, it was drowned. Number 7. Artillery Ridge Campground, Pennsylvania. In Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, history is inescapable. The ground itself is soaked in the memory of the Civil War's bloodiest battle. Visitors can stay right in the heart of it at Artillery Ridge Campground. The campground is located on the very ground where Union artillery held the line during the 1863 battle, and it sits adjacent to fields where thousands of soldiers fought and died. Campers at Artillery Ridge have for decades reported experiences that blur the line between the present and the past. The most common accounts are auditory, the sounds of cannon fire and drums echoing through the fields at night, or the disembodied shouts and cries of soldiers. Others claim to have seen apparitions of men in tattered Civil War uniforms walking the grounds before vanishing, or have felt the ground shake with the thunder of phantom horses. At Artillery Ridge, campers sleep on a battlefield where the echoes of war have never fully faded. Number 6. Crystal Lake, California. High in the San Gabriel Mountains of Southern California is the Crystal Lake Recreation Area. While its name might evoke the fictional camp of horror movies, its legend is tied to a very real and tragic local story. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, a dance hall and amphitheater were built near the lake. A worker, Stephen Majors, lived on site in a tent with his family. The story goes that one evening, he and his wife returned to their camp to find their 2 children being attacked by a massive grizzly bear, and the entire family was killed. Ever since, visitors to the campground have reported seeing the apparitions of 2 adults and 2 children wandering near the ruins of the old dance floor. What makes the legend particularly unsettling is that historians claim grizzly bears had been hunted out of the San Gabriel Mountains decades before the attack allegedly occurred. This leaves visitors to wonder what, exactly, the Majors family saw that day. Number 5. Holy Ghost Campground, New Mexico. Hidden in New Mexico's Santa Fe National Forest is Holy Ghost Campground, a narrow stretch of land tucked beside a creek in a steep canyon. It's the kind of place where sound carries unusually far, and shadows linger longer than they should. Local folklore traces the legend here back to the 1600s, during the violent upheaval of the Pueblo Revolt. According to the story, a Spanish priest was murdered in the canyon. His body was never recovered, and his spirit was said to remain behind. Campers staying along Holy Ghost Creek report hearing footsteps on gravel paths when no one is nearby. Others claim to hear prayers whispered in Spanish or Latin, carried faintly on the wind. Hikers near dusk often describe the sensation of being watched, or followed, without ever seeing anyone. More extreme versions of the legend suggest people are lured into the woods, though there are no official records of disappearances tied to the campground. Still, its reputation is strong enough to attract paranormal investigators year after year. At Holy Ghost Campground, history and legend have blurred together, leaving behind a place where even the quiet feels uneasy. Number 4, Big Moose Lake, New York. In the Adirondack Mountains of New York sits Big Moose Lake, a place tied to one of America's most tragic and well-documented crimes. In July of 1906, a young woman named Grace Brown traveled there with her boyfriend, Chester Gillette. She was pregnant, and the situation threatened his social standing. What was supposed to be a romantic getaway ended with Grace's death in the lake. Gillette claimed it was an accident. The court disagreed. He was convicted and executed, and the case became a national sensation, inspiring books and films. But for those who visit Big Moose Lake, the story never truly ended. For more than a century, campers and boaters have reported seeing a pale woman in old-fashioned clothing standing along the shore, or drifting just beneath the surface of the water. Sudden fogs are said to roll into the cove where her body was found. On still nights, some claim to hear a woman crying across the lake. The legend says Grace Brown isn't angry, only endlessly waiting at the place where she was betrayed. Number 3, Bannack State Park, Montana. Far west in Montana lies Bannack State Park, a preserved ghost town where visitors can camp and walk the empty streets of a place shaped by gold, crime, and vigilante justice. Bannack was founded in 1862 during the gold rush. With wealth came lawlessness, and a gang known as the Innocents was blamed for robbing and killing miners. A group of locals formed the Montana Vigilantes and decided that the town's sheriff, Henry Plummer, was secretly leading the gang. Without trial, Plummer was hanged in 1864. Historians still debate whether he was guilty or framed, and that uncertainty fuels the legends that followed. Visitors report phantom footsteps on wooden boardwalks, doors slamming shut in empty buildings, and sightings of a shadowy figure watching from windows or standing near the gallows. Campers nearby have described seeing a tall figure between buildings that vanishes when approached. In Bannack, the past doesn't feel distant, it feels unresolved. Number 2, Fort Worden, Washington. Along the Washington coast sits Fort Worden State Historical Park, a campground built into a former military installation filled with underground tunnels and concrete batteries. Constructed in the early 1900s to defend Puget Sound, the fort once housed soldiers, families, and later served as a state facility for troubled youth. Over decades, tragedy became part of its history. Today, visitors exploring the tunnels report hearing boots marching on metal stairs, whispers echoing in empty rooms, and an intense sensation of being watched. Strange lights are said to move through corridors with no power. Flashlights and cameras fail without warning. Even park staff have shared stories, including one caretaker who claimed to see horse-drawn wagons crossing the parade grounds before vanishing. At Fort Worden, some say the past never fully left its post. Number 1, Moon Lake, Utah. High in Utah's Intermountains lies Moon Lake Campground, a place whose reputation wasn't built on one single tragedy, but on an overwhelming number of similar modern reports. The campground's isolation plays a role. At night, the quiet becomes absolute, and every sound feels magnified. The most persistent legend involves a young girl who supposedly drowned in the lake years ago. While there's no official record, campers consistently report seeing a soaked child with blue lips standing silently near the water before disappearing. Others hear a child laughing or splashing late at night, long after everyone is asleep. Strange colored lights are reported drifting over the lake's surface. Campers describe footsteps circling tents and sudden cold spots on warm evenings. Some connect Moon Lake's activity to the wider Intar Basin, a region already known for unexplained phenomena. At Moon Lake, the legend continues to grow, fueled by the sheer number of people who experience something they can't explain. These campgrounds aren't abandoned places lost to time. They're real locations, open to visitors, rooted in documented history and repeated eyewitness accounts. Each story is tied to tragedy, uncertainty, and the unsettling feeling that the past hasn't fully settled. It's a reminder that when you step into the wilderness, surrounded by darkness and silence, you may not be as alone as you think.